not that confident that he's going to be able to do better than what we just saw in that year.
You're watching Building the Franchise with the Jacksonville Jaguars, only on MBL Network.
Welcome back to Building the Franchise. In this beginning here, we're going to look at some clips from the 35-13 Week 8 loss that we suffered against the Falcons. But we're going to talk about some big things in this episode. We're going to talk about a big-time wide receiver in Jacksonville, whether or not the rookie defensive end Grant Doman won AFC Defensive Rookie of the Year or not, as well as the possibility of signing Leonard Fournette after his rookie contract is up next year. He's had a rookie couple seasons here, so we'll see about that. We'll talk about that a little bit. And we're also going to talk about the sophomore slump, the dreaded sophomore slump for Daniel Shirley. Did he suffer that during his second season here in the MBL, or was he perfectly fine? But before we get too terribly deep into those actual important topics, we're going to talk about this Indianapolis Colts team and their inability to win against the Jacksonville Jaguars this season. We said it to start the season. The coaching staff said it to start the season. The players said it to start the season. The only person who was really in denial was the Indianapolis Colts owner, Todd. He seems to have some kind of delusional thought process that he was going to win either one of these games against us this year, and it didn't happen. He didn't come anywhere close. Look, we're dancing on him as we score off the stupid throw to the right side of the field. It was absolutely terrible. But nonetheless, like I said at the beginning of or a couple episodes ago, they're not going to win. They didn't win. Again, they didn't come close. The final score of this game was 43-28. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, as stated multiple times, went undefeated against these Indianapolis Colts. And one more time for the record, undefeated against the Indianapolis Colts this season. So maybe better luck next year, I guess, Todd. Maybe you'll be able to win one. Maybe. But in the meantime, Todd, I know I told you initially that if I went undefeated against you, that I would give you an entire episode dedicated to the crying Colts. But it's not worth the effort. It's not worth the energy or the breath. So I'm just going to do this little bit here, include it in my normal episode, and then we're going to move on. And one final note before we change topics, Andrew Luck's not the problem. Moving on, though, after the game against the Indianapolis Colts, we were 5-4 and moving into the bye week in Week 10. After the bye week in Week 10, we had a game against the Oakland Raiders on MBL Live for the Week 11 matchup, and the Raiders came into this game on a big season so far. They were doing very well. It was a really big game for us, but unfortunately, we were not able to get the win against the Raiders there in Week 11. We lost 21-13, dropping us to 500 on the season at 5-5, and Daniel Shirley was not able to find the end zone in this game. He had a pass right here to Eric Ebron that we thought was going to go to the house, but he got tackled just short, and he ended with 2 interceptions on the day, no touchdowns. And because it's the last episode of the season, we're going to go ahead and talk about, even though we're not quite through all the highlights from the remaining games, we're going to talk about Allen Robinson. He had an excellent year here in Jacksonville, his first 1,000-yard season so far in this cycle. He had 1,147 yards on 54 receptions and scored 9 touchdowns of Daniel Shirley's 20. And considering that the last 2 seasons he didn't even top 900 yards, a 1,147-yard season is pretty great for this kid. And it definitely looks like him and Daniel Shirley have figured out a way to help the team win throughout any kind of situation, short yardage, long down and distance. It doesn't matter. Allen Robinson is the go-to person for Daniel Shirley in most situations. And you're going to see a perfect example of that right here in this Week 12 matchup against the Houston Texans. He catches the ball on a little post route, makes one man miss, and takes off toward the end zone. He was on his way to his 6 receptions, 166 yards, and the touchdown that you just seen there. Unfortunately, however, even though Daniel Shirley only threw 4 incompletions in this game, one of his incompletions was an interception late in the game, and that allowed the Texans to score and take the lead, and then he tried to make too much happen, as you just seen there, and fumbled the ball. We lost the game against the Texans in Week 12, 16-13. Unfortunately, in that game against the Texans, we did lose Leonard Fournette for multiple weeks with an injury. However, it didn't really matter against these Denver Broncos, as Daniel Shirley came in and threw 16 of 23 for 283 yards and a touchdown. With the biggest play of the game coming down to the 54 seconds left in the game, we kicked a 59-yard field goal for the win, or to secure the win, to make sure that it was out of reach for the Broncos. and we moved back up to 500 on the season at 6-6. And like I said before, we had Grant Doman, and we talked about it last episode. He was having an amazing season so far at the end of last episode, and he continued it throughout the remainder of the season as well. He came really close to Defensive Rookie of the Year. Unfortunately, he was unable to win that award as the safety from the Steelers was just absolutely killing it this year with 11 interceptions. So Grant Doman did end the season, though, with 19 sacks, which was 4th in the MBL and the most of any rookie. So we're extremely excited to see what he can bring to the team next year. Unfortunately, he didn't win that award, but it's just a thing. We're moving on. And another thing we're going to talk about here is going to be Daniel Shirley. We talked about it kind of at the beginning of this episode, whether or not he had a sophomore slump, and he most certainly did not. A sophomore slump was not in the works for Daniel Shirley. He's standing in there taking hits like a champ as he throws dots. I mean, don't get me wrong, Allen Robinson was doing his thing on that play, but this play right here, the one you've seen in the intro, he done exactly what he needed to do, threw it only where his receiver could get to it. But he no doubt had a much better season this year than his rookie year. He threw for 3,353 yards this year, and you're looking right here, this is compared to last year. And one of the big things on this is he threw for 20 touchdowns, double what he threw last year. He threw for way more yards. He was just much more efficient, much better during this season, which we're super excited for moving forward. But we went into this Week 15 matchup against these Chiefs here. We went into this game with our playoff hopes still alive. We had 3 games left in the season, the Chiefs, the Titans, and the Texans. We had to win all 3, and we needed 2 losses from Oakland because of their victory over us earlier in the season. And we did get the 16-10 victory against the Chiefs here, so 1 of 3 games where we won. We also had the Raiders beat the Texans in Week 15, 35-6, so we needed them to lose the last 2, and we still needed to win our last 2. For our Week 16 matchup, we took on the Tennessee Titans on MBL Live, and it was unfortunately not even close, which ended our playoff hopes. We did lose 35-14 to those Titans in that MBL Live matchup. But, I mean, to make matters worse, we won our last game. All we had to do was beat the Titans because the Raiders actually lost their last 2 matchups, 24-0 against the Chargers in Week 16 and 35-9 against the Broncos. So we ended season 28 at 9-7, much improved from our 3-13 from the last 2 years, and we were 1 game away from playoffs.
First things first, I'ma say all the words inside my head. I'm fired up and tired of the way that things have been.